A new world is rising, one that's crushing the old globalist order and replacing it with a reawakening of renewed civilization states. We're going to take a look at the historic summit meeting between Presidents Xi and Putin. We're going to see why it signals the end to the liberal world order, and we're going to get a taste of the new order that's quickly replacing it. President Xi arrived in Moscow today as part of a 3-day official visit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, where the two powers will discuss the war in Ukraine, strengthening ties between their two nations, and the emerging global world order that's recalibrating around the rise of civilization states. Putin wasted no time in ripping into the Biden administration, which he accused of trying to hold back the economic development of both Russia and China in order to desperately cling on to what's left of their unipolar liberal international order. Putin said, quote, "The crisis in Ukraine, which was provoked and is being diligently fueled by the West, is the most striking yet not the only manifestation of its desire to retain its international dominance and preserve the unipolar world order." He went on to say, quote, "Russia-China relations have reached the highest level in their history and are gaining even more strength. They surpass Cold War time military political alliances in their quality, and with no one to constantly order and no one to constantly obey, without limitations or taboos." Now, if you don't know, the date of this meeting is not a coincidence. Xi and Putin are meeting on the 20th anniversary of the U.S. invasion of Iraq, in what turned out to be a fateful campaign that many commentators believe ushered in the beginning of the end for the liberal international order. We have to remember the kind of thinking that was behind the invasion, because it's indispensable to understanding what's happening now in this meeting between Russia and China. After the fall of the Soviet Union on Christmas Day 1991, the political theorist Francis Fukuyama claimed that we had reached what he called the end of history. Now, by that, he meant that for centuries, the world was looking for the single best political system available. And we tried all these different options. But now, with the death of the Soviet Union, the world had finally arrived at a consensus. And that consensus is that Western liberal globalism was the single best political system imaginable and was thus the standard bearer for a truly worldwide modern society. Around the same time, Charles Krauthammer penned an essay entitled "The Unipolar Moment," in which he argued that the United States had just emerged from the Cold War as this remarkably powerful country. We were the only superpower on the planet, and we could do all sorts of things with that power that we had. And what happened among our intellectual and political elite is they married Krauthammer's argument with Frank Fukuyama's argument that there's no alternative to liberal democracy, and they had the invasion of Iraq and the supposed beginning of the democratization of the Middle East. So the invasion of Iraq was in many respects the pinnacle, as it were, of this unipolar liberal international order. Well, here we are 20 years later, and guess who's admitting that it was all for naught? Guess who's admitting that both the unipolar moment and the end of history are both coming to an end? It's none other than Frank Fukuyama himself. Krauthammer, of course, has passed away, but Fukuyama published a shocking piece entitled "The End of American Hegemony," where he wrote it right after the fall of Kabul back in August of 2021, and it basically admitted that we are indeed seeing the end of history, but it's the end of the neoliberal era, the neoliberal globalist era, the era of unending cringeworthy virtue signaling, the era of tiresome diatribes on the inerrancy of liberal democracy, the era of leftist wokeism and cultural Marxism. That era is indeed coming to an end. And so this summit between Russia and China, marking the 20th anniversary of the Iraq invasion, is making it absolutely clear that they recognize that that era is over. And instead, we're seeing the rise of a new world, one that centers on the extraordinary reawakening of what scholars call civilization states, and Russia and China leading the way to this global civilization renewal in a way that's going to absolutely blow your mind. But first, gang, you have got to click on that link below and try for yourself the new technology behind MyPillow 2.0. It is amazing. Mike Lindell has absolutely outdone himself with the new fabric temperature regulating technology. It keeps you comfortable all throughout the night. I know, trust me, I use it every night. They're wonderful. And you know what? You get the same amazing savings as always if you use promo code Turley. A classic MyPillow is normally $69.98, but if you use promo code Turley, you'll get that same classic MyPillow for just $19.98, and that applies to 200 products in their catalog. So don't wait. Click on that link below. Give the gift of comfort and warmth to yourself, to your loved ones. Support one of America's most amazing patriots and get the best savings ever. Click on that link below right now. What's happening in Russia and China, and increasingly in Hindu nationalist India, is part of a larger trend of nations realigning with one another along civilizational identities and interests. So, for example, in Europe, Marion Maréchal, the niece of National Rally leader Marine Le Pen, she's promoting the idea of what's called a Latin alliance, a coalition of nationalist populist Western European nations that mirrors a comparable alliance in Central Europe called the Visegrad Four, the combination of which promises to tip the balance of power in Europe away from the bullies in Brussels and the EU. For his part, Viktor Orban in Hungary is calling for a resurgence of Christendom across the continent as the necessary backlash against secular globalization. What we're seeing here in Russia, China, India, Turkey, Iran, Hungary, France, Poland, they're all indicators of a rising polycentric world made up not so much of individual nation states, but rather massive grand civilizations. The rise of civilization state is a huge topic right now because it upends the old liberal international order that's centered on the nation state. And the key difference here is that civilization states are not united by politics, they're united by culture. That's huge, that difference there. The liberal international order literally cares nothing about your culture except for how it violates liberal woke norms, how it manifests racist, sexist, phobic tendencies. Well, then all they do is care about your culture. But apart from violating woke norms, the liberal international order doesn't give a rip about your culture. And that's because liberalism is all about imposing a system rather than a civilization on all people's times and places. It's all about making nations more liberal democracies, incorporating them into common institutions like the WTO and the IMF that all operate according to the same rules, understandings, and goals. What we're seeing happening here instead is the rise of a world where more and more populations are returning to culture, custom, and tradition. And as such, the old civilizations are reawakening. A neo-Orthodox Russia, neo-Confucian China, Shinto Japan, Hindu India, neo-Ottoman Turkey, theocratic Iran and Afghanistan, and on and on and on. And in many ways, that's exactly what we're seeing playing out right before our very eyes between Russia and China this week. A new civilizational world is dawning, all as a liberal world is finally and decisively ending. As always, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. You'll definitely want to check out my latest video on President Macron on the brink as the nation of France explodes. You're not going to want to miss that, so make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.